Okay, we should be good to start now. Hopefully you can still all hear and see me. Thank you so much for joining. Like I said, my name is Leanne Allen and I represent Macquarie University. I'm actually based in Los Angeles and look after North America. So working with students in the US and Canada, doing undergraduate, postgraduate, study abroad and exchange programs. So lots of different things for students that are doing. And also this webinar will sort of cover both undergraduate and postgraduate. If you are a study abroad or exchange student, I think you'll still find a lot of really helpful information here in the webinar as well. We will leave plenty of time for a question of answers at the end. So feel free, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a Q&A box. So please start putting your questions down there and I'll wait till the end to answer them. So feel free to complete that throughout the entire presentation and we should be sort of done in about 30 to 40 minutes with plenty of time to chit chat at the end. So I will start off. Perfect. All right. So I thought I would just start a little bit with the benefits of international education. There are so many different things. I've actually studied in 5 countries, and as well as that, I did a Master of International Relations at Macquarie University, which I've just finished. So I've got the experience of being on campus as a student, as well as having that international overseas experience too. I've actually studied in Sweden, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Japan. I think one of the biggest things about studying overseas is the employability benefits that you get from it. One of our alumni did a Bachelor of Arts with us and came back to the US and did a interview with Moody Analytics, and he had to go through 5 stages of the interviews, and he said at least 30 to 40% of every stage was just about his experience in Australia, and also soft skills that he got from that. Such as the independence and maturity that really helped him to get the jobs. So that's sort of the things that you should be considering when you're looking at where you're doing your bachelor's or master's degree. Another really important one is graduating faster. I'll go into a bit more detail later in the presentation, but in Australia, you can actually do a bachelor's degree in 3 years and a master's degree in a minimum of 1 year. There's so many benefits as well as the cultural diversity that you get from studying overseas. Benefits of Australian education particularly, there's so many universities around the world that are fantastic, especially in the US and Canada. So you've really got to consider the benefits of going overseas and going so far from family and friends as well. The number one thing is you will definitely see kangaroos and koalas, and you can get quite close to them. In some states you can actually hold a koala, which is excellent for the Instagram feeds. One of the biggest things is, of course, the duration, but you also need to consider things like finances. It can be a really affordable option to study in Australia. For example, you can work while studying. A minimum wage is about 19 Australian dollars an hour, so that's about 19 Canadian, and about 17 US dollars approximately. You can actually work up to 20 hours per week during semester and then full-time outside of teaching weeks. So it's an awesome opportunity to sort of make some extra cash, as well as the career opportunities that you can get from working in another country as well. That can have huge benefits for you. Not only are you getting an education, but you're getting work experience too. With the higher minimum wages, and also you can do things like Sydney's a beautiful place to, there we go, that's what I was looking for. It's one of the 7th most safest cities in the world. And public transport is also excellent. I don't drive in Sydney because you can catch the trains and the buses, and the train station that's on campus actually goes direct over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's such a beautiful view. For anyone who hasn't been to Sydney, you will love it. And you can see on the left there is the, the right, the Sydney Opera House. It's a really beautiful city. So Macquarie University, we are a big public school. We have about 40,000 students, and of that, there are 12,000 international students. So one of the world's most international universities. Here's an example of the train station. They actually have just reopened it. Oh, sorry, they'll reopen it at the end of the month. So the train station's on campus and it goes direct into the city, and it should only take about 20 minutes once they have opened the train line up again, and it'll leave campus every 4 to 5 minutes during peak hour. So it'll be a really great opportunity, and makes the city so much more accessible. So you've got the best of both worlds, the big cosmopolitan city experience, and yet can you retreat back to campus, which is a really pretty parkland university. I forgot to mention before that Australia actually has 40 universities, and all are public besides one of them. So Macquarie is one of the public universities. So it's a little different to the US and Canadian system where there's thousands of universities. We actually only have 24 million people in Australia. So if you're familiar with California, that's basically Southern California, Santa Barbara down to San Diego. So we do have a very small population, and interestingly, about 90% of the Australian population live within 60 miles of the coast. So lots of beautiful beaches to explore. And fun fact, if you saw one new beach every day in Australia, it would take 27 years to see them all. I thought I'd go into a bit of the sort of study areas. So we have 5 faculties at Macquarie. They're outlined there: Business and Economics, our Faculty of Arts, Science and Engineering, Human Sciences, and our Health and Medical Sciences. And just underneath that is a list of some of our majors that we have as part of those faculties. And they're predominantly the most popular majors for students coming from North America. So as I said before, most of our degrees are 3 years in duration at undergraduate level. And that's because in Australia, we don't do general education. There is an exception to that, which is we don't do, engineering and psychology is a 4-year degree, as well as law. You can actually do law at an undergraduate level in Australia. So if you are thinking about being a lawyer, from when you finish your bachelor's, your high school degree, you can go into a law program and complete in 4 years. Depending on what city you want to return to in the United States or Canada, depends on the national accreditation and state accreditation that you have to do. Some states like California require you to sit a Master of Law, otherwise, and then you can sit the bar exam, or alternatively, if you want to practice in New York, for example, you would then just go straight into the bar exam. You don't need to do any further studies. So there's a few different professional programs like that where you do need to look out for accreditation, but generally speaking, all of our programs are very easy to go back to the US and Canadian system. This is sort of for bachelor's and graduate programs. So you can do a single degree or a double degree. So you could choose to do a single degree, for example, the Bachelor of Business Administration, and you'll finish in 3 years. You may decide to do a Bachelor of Media Studies and a Bachelor of Commerce, for example, and you get 2 degrees, or essentially 2 pieces of paper in 4 years. So that's a really helpful thing to remember. And it's the same with graduate studies. So you could do a Master of International Relations in 1 year, or you may choose to do a Master of International Relations and Trade Commerce Law, for example, and that will take you 2 years. For most of our programs, you can actually do the double or the single, depending on your career aspirations and sort of how long you want to spend in Australia. And that's also worth considering. At the moment, Australia has a post-study work visa. So essentially, you have the ability to stay and work in Australia for 2 years after graduating, as long as you have studied for 2 years at Macquarie. So if you're doing a bachelor's degree, you'll do that no problem at all. If you're doing masters, you might want to consider doing a double degree if your plans are to stay and get further work experience in Australia once you do graduate. So lots of opportunities there. I thought I would just show you this. It's a good sort of way to look at the differences between Australian and North American education and how the systems differ. So for Australia and for the undergraduate students that are coming through, you need to know what you want to study. You can't come into the university undecided. You can choose an overarching degree, for example, a Bachelor of Science, and then in your first year, you can choose a major or play around with the major, but you do need to have that overarching degree decided. And that's because once you apply to the university, you actually apply direct into a program as opposed to the US system where you're applying to the school. and that comes into the application process. So essentially, in Australia, we really only care about your GPA or your test scores. So if you're coming in for a bachelor degree program, we want to see your SAT or ACT scores if you're a US student, or your Canadian higher education diploma. If you're coming in for your graduate studies, we want to see your GPA from your bachelor's degree. We don't require essays or recommendations for about 99% of our courses. There are a couple of unique ones that do need further support, but generally speaking, it's very much an academic process. Just heading back up, so to the majors, there is a little room to move around, but generally you will increase the duration of your studies if you do start a program and you want to change to something completely different. If you're looking at UK schools as well, it's worth noting that a lot of the UK schools are quite a lot more strict. So you can't actually can't change majors once you commence the program, or even once you apply to the university. That's one nice thing about the Australian system, we are a little more flexible. I've spoken about the duration of the programs. We don't have capped unit programs in Australia either. So if you're going to do an engineering program, it will take you 4 years to do that engineering degree, assuming you pass, which I'm sure you will because you have a lot of academic support available. But pretty much we don't have classes that are too full. The biggest problem with enrolling in classes is you may have an 8 AM Monday morning class if that's not really if you're not a morning person, it might not be ideal, but worst case scenario, that will be the situation. You certainly will never have the problem of not being able to get into a core unit that you need to do in that semester and that year. That's good news. In terms of the campus lifestyle, I'll go into that in a little bit, but both Australians and international students want to have the same experience when they're at universities, such as you would find in the US and Canada. We have lots of clubs and associations. A lot of our students do live on campus, although we are more of a commuter school than what you'll find a lot more in the United States. One of the biggest differences, we don't have the NCAA, and that's all over the world as opposed to the United States. We do have the Australian University Games. So that can be a lot of fun. A lot of students say it's a highlight of their bachelor degree. So you can choose a sport. You don't have to be a superstar by any means. You just need to be able to sort of play and pick up the rules and enjoy it. And the Australian University Games are held once a year around Australia. So I highly recommend that you join that. An amazing way to just get to know different people and see a different part of Australia as well. So no NCAA, although if you are a sports scholar at a very high level, looking to play state or international at some stage, we do have some very small emerging scholarships. So worth looking out to if you are a sports scholar. Again, sororities and fraternities and Greek life does not exist outside the United States, so you won't find that in Australia like most other countries. I like to joke we just have Greek students enjoying life on campus. In terms of graduate programs and fast-track degrees, this is well worth looking into if you're thinking about doing medicine or veterinary science or law, for example, and I mentioned law before. At Macquarie, you can actually do medicine in 6 years. So from your bachelor's to your Doctor of Medicine takes a total of 6 years, where it takes upwards of 10 years in the United States. Veterinarian studies takes about 5 years in Australia, 8 years here, and law, like I said, is a 4-year program. Another thing worth considering for the US students is you can use US financial aid. There's about 200 schools outside of the United States where you can use the FAFSA loans. Macquarie University is one of them, and we do have private loans as well, if you're familiar with Sally Mae. For the Canadian students, a lot of students that come to us have provincial loans that they bring with them to Australia. So that can make it really helpful as well. And I'll go into financing a bit more towards the end, but that's definitely worth considering, especially when you're comparing the US or your home country schools to Australia. These are just a few images of the university. So we do have a pool outside, which is a really beautiful pool and lovely in the summer once you finish class just to dive in. Muse is a very fun student-focused sort of campus environment where you can go and study. It's all designed by students and it's used 100% recyclable products to create the space, which I think is very cool. They also boast the longest, most continuous desk in the Southern Hemisphere, which is a fun fact for you. The gym is additional cost. It's about $10 a week from memory, maybe a little less. And some accommodation options actually do have the gym incorporated into their fees. So it's worth looking into that as well. We have a really diverse sort of food court available. Some of our accommodation options do have meal plans, some don't. But you can certainly go all over campus and get really good coffee and food. One thing you'll find when you do come to Australia is how obsessed Australians are with coffee. A fun fact for you, Australia is one of the only places in the world where Starbucks failed miserably. So you'll be hard pressed to find a Starbucks, but don't worry, there is really good coffee all over. And you'll definitely learn that very quickly. And for the Canadians, we don't have them in hot. You can bring the beans with you. Moving on, I just thought I'd point this out to you because you can do an internship or service learning activity as part of your program. It's highly encouraged, and a lot of our courses actually have a mandatory internship unit as part of it, which is really great. PACE is professional and community engagement, where you can do a service learning activity in Australia or around the world. The Global Leadership Program is also another fantastic extracurricular activity that you can choose to be part of. It's not full credit, but you do have a line on your transcripts which say you successfully completed this program. And it does involve some travelling either in Australia or overseas, and some really impressive think tanks and innovative leaders come in and speak to you. I actually went to one of them, and the Romanian ambassador to Australia spoke about the Romanian sort of outlook on the world, their relationship with Australia, the Asia Pacific and the United States and North America. So they can be really interesting ways to get engaged. If you're an environmental student, they have environmental workshops. So it's also tailored to your program as well as your passion. So if you're not in a degree that you particularly call your passion, you can certainly do the extracurricular areas to really focus on that and learn a lot more of that area. Here is just an example of some of the companies where our graduates are working at. So some pretty impressive company names in there as well. We have hundreds of thousands of alumni around the world who work really closely together. We have alumni events, often in the US and Canada. So once you come back as a graduate, you'll be able to get to know more and more alumni that have been to Macquarie in the past. That's a really great networking tool for you to have. And it also really helps sort of exploring the Macquarie degree. I said briefly before, we do have some scholarships. So our students, we look at your GPA or your test scores to determine if you can get a scholarship. Once you apply and you get an offer letter to the university, that's actually when you can apply for the scholarship as well. There are generally around $10,000, which is a one-off payment towards your tuition that you can use in the first year or throughout your entire degree, depending on how you want to make the scholarship work for you. We also have some full scholarships. So if you're a first robotics student, you could definitely look into that if you're planning on doing an engineering degree. We also have a really great program called the Big History Project. So if you're listening to TED Talks, I'd highly recommend that you listen to a talk by David Christian, who is the professor of modern history at Macquarie. And he did a TED Talk of the history of the world in 17 minutes. And as part of that, actually, Bill Gates listened to it, and they created the Bill Gates Foundation. And then we have created a full scholarship. So you can do an online course and then apply to the university for a full scholarship. It doesn't actually matter what you're studying. You can be studying anything to apply for that scholarship. So well worth doing. And the course is amazing. So I highly recommend that you check that out, whether or not you want a full scholarship. We do have accommodation on campus, and we will have some brand new accommodation hopefully by the fall of 2020. At the moment, I generally recommend the Macquarie University Village or Don Moulin College, which are similar to the US style dorms. You will generally have your own bedroom and your own bathroom, which is very cool. Australians find it a very strange, but Americans share bedrooms in college, so you won't have that experience, for better or worse. Dunmore Lane College has a meal plan, so if that's sort of what you're thinking, it's a really great option. They also have some social and academic support in the college as well. Macquarie University Village, you live in a townhouse with 5 or 6 other students, and you have your own bedroom and your own bathroom, as I said, and then you share the kitchen and the living areas. So there is no meal plan at Macquarie University Village, but across the road from campus, there's a huge shopping centre where you can go and sort of do all your shopping and organise food and that sort of thing. A lot of the students in the houses do potluck a lot of nights as well. So you just cook for everyone else and that sort of shares around, which is a really nice thing. And you could be living with people from all over the world, which is very cool as well. Australian students generally don't stay on campus traditionally, but if students that are from regional or outback areas are coming to Sydney for the first time, they will certainly be living on campus too. So it'll be a very diverse living environment, which is very cool. Igloo in Chatswood is actually about 2 train stations from the university, closer to the city. Can be a more expensive option, but it's brand new accommodation. And if you don't want to live on campus, but you still want student accommodation, it's a really great option for you. Prices differ quite a lot, so definitely look into that. And I would say generally work out what kind of lifestyle you want while living on campus, whether a meal plan is important to you, whether you want the more traditional corridor living or more independent. For the graduate students, the Macquarie University Village does have a graduate wing as well, so there is some separation there. Student services. So when you arrive in Sydney for the first time, we actually pick you up at the airport, which is very cool. So after doing that 12 or 20-hour flight, depending on where you come from, it's nice to know that a Macquarie University staff will be there for you to take you back to your accommodation, whether it's on campus or not. If you are coming with family, you can, we'll pick them up as well. We have Campus Wellbeing, which is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week support service for students, which is really great. So you can give them a call or just walk in, whether you're a bit homesick or something's happened and you want to talk through it. We've got professional staff there for you constantly. You will have overseas healthcare insurance as part of your university acceptance, and as part of that you can go to the medical clinic, which is on campus, for free. So the health insurance is really great. You shouldn't have any out-of-pocket medical expenses while studying in Australia. And the hospital is actually on campus, so it's very easy to go and get medical assistance, whether it's common cold or something else. There's lots of academic support on campus. Right? We have a numeracy centre as well as an English centre. The English centre isn't just for students that have English as a second language. It's a really great resource for if you're sort of struggling with an essay or just want to make sure you understand the Australian system. It's a really great place to go. And all our academics actually have an open door policy at least once a week. So they need to make it very clear on the unit outline when they will have their door open and when you as a student can go and see them. I would highly recommend that you make the most of that. You can go in for any reason. If you just want to chat about the content, if you're not really sure, if you just want to be known by the academics, it's a really great place to start. I think Macquarie has one of the best student support services in Australia or the world. The university certainly takes a lot of pride in the student support. So there's so many different layers of help available if you need it. I think with that, Australia's system is very much a self-help system. So you need to go seek it out. So independence, maturity is really important because there's so much help available. You just need to get it. Here's an example of some of our clubs and associations that are on campus. There's some pretty interesting ones and some traditional ones as well. Wayne Club is the We All Need Grub, and grub is slang for food in Australia. It's an Indigenous term. So there's hundreds of different clubs and associations that you can join, and if there's something that we don't have, you can apply for funding and start the club as well. So a really great option. During the orientation week, actually all the clubs and associations are aligned up on campus in the courtyard. So I would recommend joining as many that sound interesting to you. It's a great way to meet people. Go to the first couple of meetings or events, and if it's not up your alley, don't go again. There's no harm. But yeah, I think it's one of the best ways to make friends on campus. How to apply? I think, haven't seen your name, some of you have already applied, but for those that haven't, essentially you apply online. So it's a free application, which is great, and it's really straightforward. It shouldn't take you any more than about 10, 15 minutes. If you are having trouble, if there is some terminology that is a little different that you're not familiar with, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help you with that. So as I was saying, the SAT or ACT scores is what we need from US undergraduate students, as well as your passport and your transcripts. For graduate students, we'll need your passport and your transcripts. For the undergrad students, we can take your scores from early on. If you're doing the IB, we can take your predicted scores, which is really nice. For anyone who has done college studies already, whether you're an undergrad or graduate student, or if you've had work experience, we can actually, you can apply for recognition of prior learning. And that essentially gives us the ability to look at the courses you've done and the work experience and determine whether or not it's equivalent to a Macquarie course. And if that's the case, we can actually reduce the duration of your studies. And so that can make them more affordable and often lower the duration for you too. So once you get the offer letter, once you submit the application, you'll receive an offer letter generally within a week, which is fantastic. And from there you can apply for scholarships and then financial aid, whether you're applying for the US or Canadian system. To accept the offer, you need to pay the deposit plus your overseas healthcare insurance. And as I mentioned, that covers you from the moment you arrive in Sydney until you leave 1, 2, 3, 4 years later, depending on the program that you're doing. We'll then give you a document called a COE, which is confirmation of enrolment, and that's what you need to apply for your student visa. And that's also a really straightforward process. It's all online, which is nice. You don't have to go to an Australian consulate. And that, yeah. So it generally takes between 3 days and 28 days to get your student visa once you apply for it, which is really good. Just go back here quickly. Tuition on Macquarie is dependent on the program that you're doing. So when you're looking at the course page on our website, it'll have in Australian dollars the total tuition per annum at the university. So generally speaking, it is between $22,000 and $27,000. The Australian government also recommends that you have a minimum of $13,000 US for living expenses while in Australia. So in total, it's about $35,000 to $40,000 for the cost of attendance at Macquarie University. And of course, that's not including scholarships, financial aid, provincial aid, or working as well while studying, which, as I mentioned before, can be pretty lucrative for students. We have rolling admissions, so you can apply anytime. If you're in your senior year, that is the perfect time to apply. If you do have the right GPA or test scores, even at the end of your junior year, whether you're in high school or your bachelor's degree, you can certainly apply for that as well. And it is a very quick turnaround for us to assess and to do an offer letter, which is super helpful. And it is a very transparent process. So essentially you can see online as well what requirements you need to gain entry into the program. As long as you have those requirements, there's a very high chance you will gain entry. So we don't have a acceptance rate in Australia at all. In theory, we should have 100% acceptance rate because you can see exactly what is required to gain entry into that program. Being in the Southern Hemisphere, our dates are a little different. So we have session 2 and session 1 predominantly. So session 2, or I'll start with session 1. For Australian students, they generally graduate high school in December, and then we'll have early December, so December, January, February as summer vacation. We then start in February. There's a 1-week orientation before the semester commences. And then there's about 12 weeks of study with about a 2-week mid-semester break in between, which is the equivalent of the spring break in North America. Exams are generally done in June, and then you're all done by the last week of June. So July is our winter vacation. You then start again at the end of July, or if you've just finished your high school or undergraduate degree in North America, you can commence with us in July too. It's about 50-50 as to when students do start. So quite easy there, depending on if you want to take a semester off or not. It's totally up to you. We're also very happy to defer your application if you apply for one semester and decide it's all happening a bit too soon. We are more than happy to put it across to the second semester as well. You just need to send me an email and we can organise that for you. So getting back on track, from July, it's the last week of July, we generally start orientation. First week of August is semester commencements. Again, you study 12 weeks, 2 weeks mid-semester break in between. November is generally the exam period. So depending on when your exams fall will depend on when you can come home if you do choose to come home for the Australian summer. And then, like I said, you're on summer vacation from December, January, February. So same but different. You're essentially studying for the same amount of time. It's just all reversed around. All right, any questions? Hopefully that was helpful for you. I whizzed through that, but let me just bring this back up. Oh dear. Oops. Okay, here we go. Okay, so one question, do you need both SAT and ACT scores to apply, or is it just one or the other? It's a great question. So you essentially need one or the other. We don't mind, you're welcome to take them both and then submit the one that you do best in or not, completely up to you. Generally speaking, minimum requirements are about a 1200 SAT or a 24 ACT, but again, that does depend on what program you want to study. Hopefully that answers your question, Catherine. Is the 22 to 27,000 in cost annually? Yes. So the tuition is an annual cost, just like you would see in North America, and it does depend on the program, as opposed to in the US, it's often the university has a set price. And the $13,000 that I had in the presentation is for all living costs. So that's your flights, accommodation, insurance, entertainment, food, everything you'd be spending money on in that 12-month period comes into that $13,000 to $15,000 recommendation. So in total, your tuition and living costs, total cost of attendance, is about $40,000 US dollars. So closer to 51 Canadian dollars or 52 Canadian dollars. Depending on the exchange rate. But the Australian and Canadian dollar are very similar at the moment. Does that make sense, Jack? Hopefully. The next question is, how much is the first scholarship potentially for? Potentially, it's a full scholarship. So this is for students that have done first robotics engineering competitions. So you need to get a recommendation from your coach as well as a mentor to apply for that scholarship, and we require a one-page statement of purpose as to how FIRST has changed you and the impact that it's had on your community. So it can be up to a full scholarship. We do have some $20,000 scholarships that goes towards your tuition as well. So any other questions? By the look of the names, it looks like some people have already applied and accepted, which is fantastic, and some students are very early on in the process. So feel free to let me know your questions if you have them now. Do we accept AP scores? So for the undergrad US students, we actually don't, because we don't have the general education component that you do have in the US. However, if you do a community college or university level courses while doing your high school, we will certainly look to see if we can accept those. Also for transfer students, if you go to community college first, you can certainly apply to Macquarie to finish after that, to graduate from our program. So no, we don't accept AP scores, is essentially the answer. Okay. So student has asked if they do a bachelor in business and a master's in engineering, how long would that take? It's a good question. So the Bachelor of Business would be a 3-year degree, whether it's a Bachelor of Commerce or a Bachelor of Business Administration. And then their engineering degrees would be 2 years. So we have a Master of Engineering specialising in electrical, and a few more different specialisations that are coming up shortly. That will be a total of 5 years to complete those double degree. And that's certainly something you can do at the university. Someone has asked about the weather. That's an excellent question. So being in the Southern Hemisphere, obviously, like I said, dates are a little different, but happy to report if it's below about 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius, Australians will complain it's too cold. That's generally the minimums during the day in winter, which is heading into winter now, or it's autumn or fall at the moment. And then summer, we generally complain if it's upwards of 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 35, 38 degrees Celsius. We like a very mild temperature, especially in Sydney. Can get a tiny little bit humid during the summer, but generally speaking, it's really beautiful weather. Perfect, wouldn't quite say perfect beach weather the whole year, but certainly lovely. For students that are used to the snow, you can find snow in Sydney. It's about a 2.5-hour drive outside of Sydney. You might want to come back to the US and do that during our summer, though. You might find better slopes. Any other questions? I hope this has been helpful for you guys. You've learned from it. You're also very welcome to send me an email with any follow-up questions that you may have. Just give it a few more minutes to see if someone is typing. Okay. How easy is it to theoretically switch majors? So in your undergrad, it is easier, especially. We have had students at graduate level switch, but it often means a brand new program, which means you start from scratch. But at an undergraduate level, it's sort of like an overarching degree that you need to have chosen. If you stay within that overarching degree, such as a Bachelor of Commerce or a Bachelor of Science, it's relatively easy to change. In fact, a lot of students probably do in their first year or so. Whereas if you're doing a Bachelor of Science and you decide you want to do a Bachelor of Ancient History, it may mean that you need to extend your degree a little bit, depending on at what point in the process that you do decide to move. In theory, though, I would say it is easy to switch majors. In terms of getting work, it's relatively easy as well to get a job, especially with the huge shopping centre that's across the road. They actually claim to have the most international brands under one roof in the Southern Hemisphere, which I find pretty funny because there's not much competition in the Southern Hemisphere. But a lot of students do go and work there in the shopping centre. Alternatively, there's obviously really easy to get into the city, so you can go and work in downtown Sydney, and there are a lot of jobs on campus as well. Lots of different food outlets, coffee shops, and student support jobs as well that are available for students. Any more coming through? All good. Oh, what happens during orientation? Good question. So that's the first week prior to semester actually starting in the teaching week. So it's generally 5 days of a lot of different activities, which can be anywhere from getting to know the campus and getting to know your faculty and the academics, to tours of the library. There's also a couple of days where all the clubs and associations are out in the courtyard promoting their group, which I'd highly recommend joining. This scuba diving group and surfing group is really fun. And there's a lot of social activities as well that you can join. There's a trip to the zoo, if you're excited to see your first kangaroo and koala. especially going to Taronga Zoo in Sydney. If you haven't been before, I would highly recommend it. They say the giraffes have the best real estate in Australia. And it's pretty amazing views of the Sydney Harbour that they do have. They also have bushwalks around campus, and there's a really beautiful walk along the coast of Sydney, which I'd highly recommend you do in your first couple of weeks in Sydney, which is Bondi to Coogee. And that's something that you can do as part of the orientation that the university sets up with mentors and takes you out. Speaking of mentors, you can elect to be as part of the peer mentor buddy program, so you can meet someone else in the university in a similar degree to you, and they take you on social activities as well. It's very similar to what you would find in the US and other universities around the world. It's just orientation week, freshers week, O week, lots of different things. The university also has a really fun week in September called Conception Week, which is when the university essentially was established, and they have a huge music festival, which is always lots and lots of fun. So there's so many different activities happening around campus. You certainly won't get homesick. Okay, a student said they have 2 years left of high school. What is the best way to prepare? That's an awesome question. And I would say enjoy high school first and foremost. Don't freak out about the whole university experience just yet. For us, as I was saying, the SAT and ACT scores are really important. So focus on that to get the best grade, because the higher the test scores, the better the scholarship at the end of the day. We want to see your transcript to make sure you've done well, so do focus on that, although we don't publish a minimum GPA requirement. But yeah, enjoy and just keep looking at your options and keep thinking about the degrees that you want to do. If you're not sure what you want to do in your undergraduate degree, I generally recommend doing something you really enjoy, and then specialise in your graduate studies. Are there opportunities to travel around the rest of Australia that are organised by Macquarie? Good question. I think Australia is incredibly beautiful, and I'm not biased. So many different things that you can see while there. There are some travel opportunities available by the university. For example, the Global Leadership Program, which I pointed out before, they actually take you to Canberra if you're part of that program, which is our capital, not Sydney or Melbourne. And that's when you can get to go to the see our Parliament House and the War Memorial Museum, and lots of other things that are very unique to Canberra, the capital of Australia. As part of that program as well, the Global Leadership Program, you can see other parts. Some internships are available. I know a couple of students have gone out to regional Australia and worked with Indigenous Australians, which is a really special opportunity. Apart from that, during semester breaks, there's a couple of different organisations. I think one's called 2 Fish, 3 Fish, or 1 Fish, 2 Fish. I have to double check that. You can Google it. And they essentially give student tours up the east coast of Australia. So you can see sort of Byron Bay, which is very cool, and then the Gold Coast, and heads up to Cairns and the Great Barrier Reef. Students often say that is an absolute highlight. It's a really great way to see Australia. In terms of independent travel, we have quite a few different budget airlines. Jetstar and Tiger, for example, if you want to have a look into that, that you can get to the different cities really easily. I would recommend that you try and see the Uluru, which is the rock in the centre of Australia, while you're there studying throughout your program. It's really unique, and you will not see anything like it anywhere else in the world. Australia has 7 capital cities. So you can certainly go and see so much of Australia, and they're all very unique and offer things as well. I think generally students travel by plane because it is such a huge country. There are some train networks available, and of course Greyhound and that sort of thing can be easy to see different parts of Australia as well. How easy is it to acquire an internship, and how does the internship program work? Good question. So this essentially depends on what program you're doing. So I think you're, Jack, interested in the Bachelor of Commerce. So you can certainly do an internship as part of that program. It's an elective, but highly recommended that you take it. and you could be with a multinational corporation, for example, around campus. There's a huge amount of companies that have their Asia Pacific headquarters around Macquarie Park, which is a great way to get involved. I'm trying to think of a couple of examples. Panasonic is one of them that students have interned with before. Having total mental blank for the other names. But if you want to do an internship, you absolutely can. There is plenty of opportunities to do that. And the university will help you to get them. If you can source it yourself, that's great too. The university will assist in setting that up. Any other questions? Nope. Cool. Hope you all found this really helpful. Lots of different information there, so please feel free to send me another email just to clarify some things, or if you just want some further information, please do so. I'm more than happy to help. As I said in the beginning, I'm based in Los Angeles. So here to make the process as easy as possible for you as you go through the application right through to arriving in Australia. And like I said, I know what it's like to be an international student. So many different feelings, that it's such an exciting opportunity for you. So highly recommend an international experience to everyone and anyone. And hopefully see you guys in Sydney soon, if not before. Thank you so much for joining, and have a nice evening.